Hello, my name's Richard, and welcome to Tilgate Tales. Today's story is about a very special woman from history called Mary Anning. Now you might not have heard of her, that's okay, but hopefully after the story you'll agree that she's very, very, very special indeed. Are you sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin. If you lived 200 years ago, and don't mind getting wet, if you went for a walk at the seaside, there's a girl you might have met. If you climbed down the cliff tops and went for an explore, you might have spotted Mary, searching on the shore. "Mary, what are you looking for?" you would surely want to say. "I'm looking for fossils," she says. "I come here every day. Every morning I leave home, my dog Tray at my side, to see what fossils I can find, left here by the tide." She points at all the rocks nearby. "Would you like to look too?" You smile and nod, although the rocks just look like rocks to you. She hands you a small brush to hold and leans against the cliff as her little dog yaps at you and gives a curious sniff. The brush doesn't seem right for rocks. The bristles are soft and small. "I find and cut out the fossils," she says, "and clean them last of all." She feels her way along the beach, then suddenly stops by a rock. Sorry, but what are fossils?" you ask, and she stops and stares in shock. "Haven't you ever wondered," she asked, "what lived on the earth before? What flew in the sky, or swam in the sea, or stood here, right on the shore? This beach was once the ocean floor, and living and swimming there were huge sea creatures that are now gone, that vanished everywhere. Huge lizards that swam like fish, but grew to the size of whales. Shoals and schools of large strange squids, and others with shells like snails. The plesiosaur was a mighty one, that swam with flippers swish swish, that twisted and turned its long, long neck to catch unsuspecting fish. In your mind you see them. The sea is calm and clear. It's warm and wet and rich, and yet those sea monsters might be near. And suddenly, passing behind you, a dolphin perhaps, although it has the look of a lizard, you think, as you watch it silently go. Its fins push it slowly and calmly. It's as beautiful as it is scary. This massive monster disappears in the deep. "Oh, that's an ichthyosaur," says Mary. "I found it right here on this spot." You feel your feet back on dry land. The sea disappears and the creatures fade, and you find yourself stood on the sand. When creatures die, they don't always vanish. Sometimes, instead, they transform. They turn into rock and are lost underground, unless there's a helpful storm. She turns to the rock excitedly and pulls out a hammer to dig. "Last night there was a massive storm and it got the waves angry and big. The sea splashed up on the rocks and uncovered the treasure beneath." She takes back the brush and sweeps a few strokes and points at the rock and says, "Teeth." Together you cut and you brush at the rock, which at first is just lumpy and dull. But Mary and you, and Tray the dog too, soon discover a skull. "Do you recognise it?" Mary asks, and then she happily grins. "This is a fossil ichthyosaur. Do you remember, the one with the fins?" "Fossils are fantastic," she says. "They're like holding a piece of the past. I haven't found any for a couple of weeks. Oh, we finally found one at last." She carefully places the skull on the ground and admires its eyes and its jaws. She opens a bag while Tray the dog sniffs and pats at the skull with his paws. The funny thing about fossils is, they're rather like a massive jigsaw. The more pieces you have of the puzzle, you see, it just helps you learn so much more. "I sell my fossils," Mary says. "Collectors will pay for each find. But once in a while, the fossils I get are the first to be found of their kind. Professors and doctors who study the past tell everyone what I discover. The ichthyosaur first, the plesiosaur next, and there's so many left to uncover. But though I'm the one to find them, girls aren't supposed to do it. I know all about fossils, but men say no. And apparently that's all there is to it. One day, she says with a sad little sigh, I reckon things might start to change. Girls will do anything men can do, and no one will think that that's strange. You want to tell her what the future is like, as you both put the skull in her bag. There's no use in wondering, she says with a sigh, and Trey gives his tail a wag. We should keep looking, you say out loud, behind where the skull was, because we might find the rest of the skeleton too, and we'll find out just how big it was. She stops getting ready to pack up and go. That's the spirit, she says in reply. And who knows what else we'll find, she adds, with a twinkle of glee in her eye. If you lived 200 years ago, you wouldn't know her name. She was never that important, nor had glory, wealth, or fame. But like her fossils amongst the rocks, and hidden far from view, was an extraordinary woman that you would wish you knew. Extraordinary comes from anywhere, and not just where you'd expect, and your very first impressions may not always be correct. If only they had known that, back in those days of yore, then they might have spotted Mary, searching on the shore. Did you like that story? Unfortunately, it's true that Mary Anning didn't get all the credit she deserved for her wonderful discoveries. She gave so much to the world of science, and to the world of paleontology, which is a long word for fossil hunting. That's what we call the study of dinosaurs and all other kinds of prehistoric life. Now, her discoveries truly changed the world. You could be just like Mary Anning. Now, maybe you don't live by the sea, or maybe you're not that into dinosaurs, but there's so much left to discover around the world. There's so much you can add to science. And who knows, maybe we'll be reading a story about you someday. Well, I hope you enjoyed that story. Hope you enjoyed the rest of our resources. We're going to be looking at fossils and evolution for the next 3 weeks, so keep an eye out for those, and hopefully we'll see you next time for our next story here at Tilgate Tales. Goodbye.